This episode of Warp 5 is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek.fm at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/TrekFM. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the non-profit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join in on the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode or any other, please join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type Babel, that's B-A-B-E-L, into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
Hi, I'm Anthony Montgomery, Ensign Travis Mayweather on Star Trek Enterprise, and you're listening to Trek.fm.
How we doing, Trip? Ready when you are. Prepare for warp.
Course laid in, sir. Request permission to get underway. Let's go.
Welcome, Boomers, to another episode of Warp 5, Trek FM's dedicated Enterprise podcast. I am but one of your hosts for this podcast, and my name is Brandi Jackola. And with me, as almost always, is Patrick Devlin. Patrick, how are you?
I'm good. Can't complain. How are you today?
I'm just peachy. I'm peachy. I got caught in a windstorm. My hair's all funky. It's great. It's great. And then also, always joining us, Brandon-Shea Mutala. Brandon, how are you?
I got a terrible stomachache. I've been eating this raw targ foot with like hair on it. Yuck. And it's not sitting out. Phlox told me to eat it, but it's not sitting well in my tummy.
Good source of protein.
Yeah.
That's what
good source of death, too.
And for tonight's discussion, we have a special guest with us for his first appearance on Warp 5, Zach Moore from Standard Orbit. Zach, how are you?
Hello. Greetings and felicitations from Standard Orbit. I'm happy to be here with you all. This is my first time on Warp 5, so it's always exciting to jump into a new podcast with y'all and talk about some. Well, I'll let you guys set up the topic, but it's very catered to a TOS Enterprise crossover discussion, and I'm looking forward to delving into it with y'all.
Fantastic.
I caught your Trelane reference.
There you go. Hip, hip, hooray, tally ho.
Excellent. So, tonight, today, this afternoon, this morning, wherever you're listening to this, we are going to be discussing and comparing Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, with the Season 2 episode Enterprise. Let's try that again. The Season 2 episode of Enterprise, Judgement. And that's perfect fit for Zach to be here to discuss this with us. So, let's get started. So, Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, gave us an up-close look at the Klingon justice system because Captain Kirk and Dr. McCoy were put on trial, a very public trial, for the assassination of Chancellor Gorkon. And 11 years after that movie came out, Star Trek Enterprise visits an earlier time in the timeline in the Klingon Empire's justice system in the episode Judgement. And some believe that it is very similar, if not a complete ripoff, of that scene in Star Trek VI. So we are going to discuss that. So let's talk about the things first that are the similarities between the two. And we're not going to talk about like physical appearance of the courtroom and stuff like that, but let's talk about other similarities. Brandon, I know that you have felt that there are a lot of similarities here, so let's start with you.
Yeah, I haven't been the biggest fan of this episode, throughout most of my watches of this episode, because I kind of think that this is a bit of a ripoff of Star Trek VI, and, Star Trek VI is such a great movie that it didn't need to have this kind of an episode. But, rewatching it again this week, I think it was just last night that I watched it, actually, for this, I've kind of lightened a bit on it. I don't think it's as bad. Like, it would have been in my bottom 5 Enterprise episodes prior to this, but I'll probably put it, maybe bottom 20 or 20, something like that. But I think the problem with the episode is the direction and, like, the shots and the angles that they've used, like, especially of the overhead shots of the court, are, like, completely ripped off from Nicholas Meyer in Star Trek 6.
But not done as well.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Like, I compare it to, because obviously this is, call it an homage, call it what you will, but this is lifts heavily from Star Trek 6, and you can't help but think about the better version of what you're seeing when you're seeing them shot the exact same thing, shot in the exact same ways. It's such it just screams for an A to B comparison, and no fault to the Enterprise guys. There's no way they can live up to a major motion picture. The budget, the cinematography, everything. So the way I look at it, I kind of compare to, like, if you look at, like, Superman the movie, the first Christopher Reeve movie, top of the line for the time, special effects, production value, cinematography, and then you look at Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, like, bargain budget, Superman movie. You can see the strings. You see, like, there's no crowd. There's no scope anymore. Like, that's the A to B comparison that my mind went to watching this episode. Just purely just in the way it was presented to you. And I feel like they didn't. And in fact, I'm glad that the courtrooms looked the same. They should. That creates a continuity inside the Star Trek universe, because it's only 100 years, give or take, before Star Trek 6. So it makes sense that courtrooms would look the same. But as Brandon said, to have the exact same angles, the same shots, the same guys sitting in the seats banging the sticks, like, your mind goes to Star Trek 6 and how excellent it was done there, and it really hurts this episode stand on its own.
Patrick, what are your feelings?
Well, they kind of said it all. Except when I first watched Judgment, I hadn't just watched Star Trek 6, so I didn't really compare them in my mind until I was forced to watch them back-to-back for this, and now I don't like Judgment as much. So, I don't hate it. I don't, but you definitely notice it when you're looking to watch them back-to-back. You definitely notice that, they used, they like you said, they're trying to pay homage to Star Trek 6, and it's kind of, a little bit of fan service there, but it didn't come off as well as I think they had hoped it would come off.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. I guess I'm going to be the one dissenter, because I saw major differences, maybe not in the way it was shot, but in the storylines, and I just thought, it's Klingon court, and that's pretty much where the similarities ended for me. Because it's a very different situation, it's a different reason, it's a different structure of the trial than what we see in Star Trek 6. And I'll get into that more later on when we start talking about the differences. But the similarities to me didn't bother me, because I felt like they were showing us the things that we knew were established from Star Trek 6, and then they're going to turn it on its ear and do something different with it. So I actually appreciated that, and even watching them back to back, which I did. I watched Star Trek 6 first. I watched that episode of Enterprise right after it, and I'm just like, and I took notes. I'm like writing down all of the differences, and then all of the similarities were just superficial things to me. So, but that's, again, my personal opinion, and as I have often stated, opinions are neither right nor wrong. They just are. They're subjective. So,
well, Brandi, I see what you're saying. But I think what pushes over the edge for me is they go to Rura Printe. Like, did you have to do that?
Where else are they
in
gonna
addition
go?
to the courtroom?
No, I have a point right before that actually bothers me more now that didn't before. When they're going through this whole thing, right? The guy, oh man, I'm terrible with names, but the guy advocating for Archer,
Martok.
Kolos.
Martok.
Kolos.
Kolos, the executioner.
Yeah, there.
That's Kodos. Not to be confused with Kolos the Medusan. There's just so much fan service. So sorry, Patrick.
No, it's okay. But
please.
He's telling him how, like,
the guy
there
on
was a
Tarsus
ton.
4?
I'm never getting this in.
We let the man talk.
Sorry.
So
I'm going to mute all of you. Shush. Patrick, talk.
So they go on about how, like, the justice system goes in cycles, but we only see the 2 times that the cycle is a dog and pony show. Like, that bothered me a lot. Like, I know this is
the 2 times we happen to see it. It's
a dog and
not what
pony
it should
show.
be.
It's just, you're guilty. We're just doing this for fun, so people can bang sticks. But at the end, he kind of like he's trying to push it back over the edge where justice is actual justice and not just a dog and pony show. And then apparently 100 years later, we're right back to where we started this episode.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's see. This episode is 2252. And then Star Trek 6 is 2393.
2293.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah. So we got 150 years, give or take. Maybe they go in like 75-year cycles. We just happen to catch the most extreme orbit of the cycle. But yeah, that's a good point. It doesn't do the Klingon justice system any justice to see no justice being done.
Apparently, they just always suck.
Well, I have an argument for that, but that's coming up later.
Okay, well, then I'll tell you the thing that pushed it over the top for me, and it has nothing to do with Star Trek 6. The thing that really pushed this episode over the top, there's two things, actually. The one is at the end with Rurapente, when they just walk out the front door.
Yeah, so bad.
That's not the front door.
That is just how they all walked in. That's how they all got in there.
Yeah, but that's just a hallway they emptied into where they were. That doesn't necessarily
it's a hallway.
The front
They're
door.
on a set. I realize that. They are on a set, and it's the hallway. But
the Planet Hell set, probably.
I don't know. So, I don't know. The end when they just walk out and it's done. I mean, I don't know. Like, that kind of frustrates me as an ending. Like, it's just such it's such an ending. I don't know.
It's an anticlimax.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the thing that pushes it really over the top for me is the inclusion of Duras. You know?
Oh, yeah. Fan service done wrong.
Yeah.
This is like Star Wars prequels fan service.
Like, Duras is just the scourge of the Klingon galaxy, and he's just going to be the thorn in all of the main characters' thighs or feet, or where do thorns go?
Thorns go in your
sides.
sides.
Okay.
Thorn in the side.
The biblical use of thorn is for the side.
In Canada, they go in your thigh.
But Brandon, did you catch he was the son of Taral, which was his bastard child from Redemption?
Sure. Yes, I totally caught that, and I like.
So they reused the names, just like Colonel Worf was Worf's grandfather in Star Trek 6. That's fan service.
Yeah, that was.
Don't you love it?
The thing is that I didn't like Worf being in Star Trek 6. I thought it was a little too on the nose. And
I agree.
I actually did not like that at all. I'm like, really?
I actually messaged Brandon about it while watching it.
What's Worf doing here?
Okay, I'm
Colonel
confused
Worf,
again.
though.
There's a
I
Worf.
don't care. I don't care which Worf he is.
Michael Dorn.
I don't care which Worf he is. Get a different person to play him, and then still name him Worf. That would be better.
So did it bother any of y'all that J.G. Hertzler played Kolos here?
Yes.
Yeah, not really.
It did.
Nah,
I don't like.
I'm
To
okay
me, it
with
did because again, he's Martok. To make him another Klingon, I don't know. Like, it's to see Jeffrey Combs play a Ferengi and Vorta
Andorian,
Combs.
Was that
he's
Canadian coming out?
He's Canadian.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay.
Comb my hair, eh?
Combs.
Anyways, he played a Ferengi. He played an Andorian. Like, he plays all these different things. Like, to see Martok as another Klingon, like, when you're looking at him, I'm just constantly thinking of Martok when I'm looking at him.
Well, it's not. They did a really good job making him look different.
I agree.
He looked nothing like Martok, but his voice is so distinctive,
Yeah.
J.G. Hertzler just has such a distinctive voice, and Martok is my favorite Klingon. So
Me too.
The fan service of casting him here actually worked for me. As much as I'm complaining about the other stuff, I'm like, you know what? I felt like he really elevated the material, and I really hey, that's Martok doing stuff with Archer. This is cool. You can even say that he's an ancestor of Martok. He's Martok's grandfather. Everybody's grandfather.
And they're all interconnected because this is Star Wars, and it's all repetitive and in cycles, and it's the Skywalker family Duras saga.
And it's more like it could be like cycles of 30 years because we tend to have cycles of 30 years as humans. So who knows? Maybe the Klingons have 30-year cycles. We just don't know.
And they have longer lifespans, so who knows how long their cycles
right?
are.
Maybe it's more than that, but I just noticed personally by studying history that things go in about 30-year cycles with humans. Because those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it.
Like Duras, that guy.
Yeah,
over
that guy.
and over and over again.
Like this episode repeated Star Trek 6. Got it.
Yeah, well, that's another disagreement that I have, because the structure of the episode, although it is a Klingon trial, is very different from the movie. Because in the movie, we see the situation that happened before they're arrested and put on trial. In this, we start with Archer being on trial. We have no idea what he did, and then we start to see it through the telling of Duras's heavily biased story. And
Now,
then,
before we get into that,
Captain Archer, the Battleship Enterprise.
Battleship.
Okay, so before we get into that discussion, I need to bring up. So I was talking with David A. Goodman on this, and I did tell him that while we were interviewing him, I did tell him I didn't like this episode very much, and he was like, "Why not?" And, I told him, I'm like, I think it's too much like 6, but the element that he has in here that is unique to this storyline. Are you guys familiar with the movie Rashomon?
Yes.
No.
Okay, so it's an Akira Kurosawa film from the 50s. It's a Japanese samurai film, and basically, it's a story, and it's told from different people's points of view. So the Next Generation episode, Matter of Perspective, takes this type of storytelling trope, and this is where it comes from. Like, this is the Rashomon type storytelling, and he does talk about that in the interview that I did with him. But I mean, like, that's part of the problem that I have with him as well, or sorry, with the episode as well, is that the first story that we get is Duras' story, and it's so completely ludicrous.
I don't give a damn about your emperor or your chancellor. Debt to the empire.
Like,
so yeah, that seems reasonable. I'm sure Archer said that.
I don't know. I don't think we're supposed to be laughing during that scene, but I am. Like, I don't think this is supposed to be a funny episode, but I'm laughing because it's like, it's obviously ridiculous. I don't know, but it's obviously wrong, and I don't know. That's just.
Well, I mean, there are this episode. Speaking of Matter of Perspective, like this episode really reminded me of a lot of different Star Trek trial episodes, more than just Star Trek 6. Obviously, Star Trek 6, the Klingons, Repente, the courtroom, all that, right? That's for sure the number one comparison. But it also reminded me of Tribunal on Deep Space Nine, because it's basically O'Brien gets this advocate and like, well, you're already guilty, but we just got to go through this thing, and they were going to kill you or whatever. That definitely, because the older lawyer who is kind of beaten down by the system, that you kind of sympathize with them, that kind of character exists in both episodes. And then also in a Rules of Engagement with Worf on Deep Space Nine, where he gets put on trial because that is, it's not quite Rashomon, but there are elements of that, right? It's people's testimony, and we're cutting back and forth between stuff. So those immediately came to mind during this episode too, and it felt like this weird remix of all these ideas, Star Trek and not Star Trek, and but that was a different wrinkle. To your point, Brandi, it was different. It wasn't just we saw the reasons for what we're watching were unraveled before us over the course of the story, as opposed to a linear story. But I will say, is this not the shortest teaser of like any Star Trek episode? It's like under a minute.
Really short. Really
short.
No,
there's one in Impulse in season 3 of Enterprise is like just T'Pol screaming for like 3 seconds,
and that's it.
It's been a long road. What a transition that must be.
For once, no one is angry that the theme song came on. They're just like, "Stop the screaming!
Stop screaming at me!
Stop it!" So, yeah. So, all right, we've had all had our say on the similarities. So let us get into the differences a bit more. So,
I jumped the gun on that one. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. You're just fine. It's all fine.
Well, you did. I did want to mention one last thing, which is really cool, and I think we all agree. The judge's gavel. That's really cool.
I want one of those. I want that glove to hold that ball. I really do.
But does he only have 4 fingers, or what's the deal?
No, it looks like he has. I don't know. It looks like he had 5, but I didn't pause it and inspect it.
No, I think
closely.
it only has 4, but I don't think his hand is in the hand.
But where's his hand?
I think he's holding. It's like a gauntlet that's extended past his hand. So the fingers,
I always thought it was like a glove, and he picked up the.
No, I think it's all one piece.
But I think it's attached.
Yeah, I think it is one
it's
piece.
Attached,
yeah.
And it's like a gavel, but
Interesting.
it's a gauntlet instead
with like a
of
giant hook
hammer.
claw.
Yeah.
Made of flint, apparently.
Like the Romulans. For some reason, the Klingons have one. Got it.
Yeah.
See, in Star Trek 6, you can't really see it because the judge is in the dark so much, right?
It's much better shot that way. Yes. Hey, I'm biased. I'm the TOS guy. All right, give me a break, people. Got to defend my franchise.
Well, this should be your favorite episode of Enterprise.
I feel like I'm on trial here. Am I right? Yeah. Anyway.
So yeah, and apparently it and the thing he bangs it on are flint because it explodes every time. That or someone keeps reloading those little pops we had as kids.
Oh, I loved those. I used to hit those with hammers.
Yeah, I used to just snap my fingers and pop them in my hand.
I
had a
do
He-Man that you could like turn, and it would like. It was like a battle punch He-Man or something, and it had like those caps in it.
Well, anyway, I just want to get that in before we moved on because that was super cool. And we all agree on that.
Yes, we do all agree on that. All right, so what was I doing? I was saying something, wasn't I?
The differences.
Differences,
Yeah.
okay. So we've already discussed the difference of the way the story is told. And there is a bit difference in the procedure of the trial between the two, because in Star Trek VI, they go through what we assume are the normal aspects of any trial, where you call witnesses give testimony, cross-examination, etc. We get none of that in the beginning of this episode. Kolos basically says, you don't talk. You don't say anything. And Archer's like, well, how do I get to tell my side of it? And he's like, you don't. So he has to go in there and just stand while this Klingon, Duras, tells his story. And he gets understandably upset that it's not being told true. But let's think about how little experience the Klingons have with humans at this point. I mean, to the point where they don't even recognize who Archer is and what he has done for the Klingons in season 1, during the events of Broken Bow. So that's pretty interesting that nobody bothers to research that, and that comes back to bite them later. But for me, it's one of those situations where you feel like, okay, you have to say something. Anyone in that situation would have said something. And of course, Archer gets in trouble for it. And somehow, Kolos gets a spine and decides to actually defend Archer and get his side of the story. But it's not surprising to me that the Klingons would just automatically believe what Duras said, because what experience do they have with humans to contradict it?
But see, that's the other frustrating thing about the story to me, is that we've seen it so many times where, the humans come in and show them the way and teach them the way and, stand up for your rights, don't be that person and do what's right. And
Takes one man with a vision.
yeah, I don't know, like we've heard that so many times with Star Trek as well, and the humans are always defeating the Klingons, and like this is another thing where it's like, we're going to teach the way and we're going to be better than the Klingons, and it's like, I don't know. It's just over and over. I think this episode is now going down, in my opinion, again while we're talking about it.
Yeah,
but.
I liked the turn of Kolos, right? But I didn't feel like we had established his character enough to even know why he would do that. It seemed like a very 90-degree turn for him to just go with the system in one scene and the next scene go against the man.
But that's the limitation of a 42-minute episode,
I don't really. That part didn't bother me because I feel like it did fit within his character. Because he talks about winning over 200 cases, which clearly was not a possibility under the current system. Because it wasn't even as if they were saying, well, we don't listen to you because you're human. We just don't listen to people on trial at all. Anyone. Doesn't matter if it's a Klingon or not. I'm going to tell my side. You're going to be guilty. You're going to go to die. And that was kind of the end of it. And he does that whole speech about, even before he turns, he tells them about, one time, before, this was like a real trial. Like, this was legit. And it was, maybe I'm wrong, this was the first time you really see that not everyone is a warrior class, right? They had that little speech in there, too, which I enjoyed. I liked that because, obviously, you can't have a society of everyone just fighting because people have to do other stuff.
What?
Yes, Brandon.
Well,
other stuff.
Other stuff.
Well, yeah, hey, maybe, by the time...
In Canada, we all just play hockey. That's it.
Play hockey and ride moose. But hey, I guess, you were talking about Star Trek 6, they had kind of a real trial, right? There was testimony, there was this and that. Maybe, Kolos' changes, he came back to the Empire, he instituted some of these changes, and so we fast forward to the Star Trek 6, there were actually some progress made. Not in that particular trial, but at least Kirk and McCoy had a chance to speak, unlike Archer.
Well,
I mean, no one listened to him, but yeah.
Like I said, I have an argument for that, but I don't want to. No, I don't want to talk about it yet. I don't want to talk about it yet because I don't want to talk about it yet. I'm not ready for that yet. We haven't fully examined some things yet. So I know I'm being annoying, but it's something where we're going to talk about the endings of both situations, and so anyway, so yeah, we obviously talked about Klingon justice is a dog and pony show right now, and it's well, I guess I can go into this really, because my husband brought up an interesting point. He says that the justice system seems to be different depending on how well the Empire's doing. If the Empire's doing really well, like they were in the time of Enterprise, they probably just didn't care. Everybody's just guilty, get rid of them, let's not waste our time. But then in Star Trek 6, where like the whole galaxy is watching, and they're basically, their homeworld is dying, their race is in danger of becoming extinct, all of a sudden they're all about, let's have a fair trial. Or at least make it look like a fair trial. But my personal feeling is, if they didn't have Kirk's personal log showing his bias against Klingons, could the verdict have gone a different way?
I don't think so. I mean, you have a drunk.
They would have manufactured something. They would have found a way, because their objective was they were going to be guilty one way or the other.
Right.
Had it not been that case, maybe something else. But
the objective is to kill. I hear those names go again. Kill Gorkon, right, and to get Kurt killed as well. So they were going to do it one way or another. It was obvious. They already knew that Kirk's son was killed, so they would have brought that up either way, right? And they had a drunk doctor trying to save the guy. So it's kind of an easy win.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, do you think the judge was always just going to say they were guilty no matter what evidence was presented?
In that particular situation, yes.
You think the judge was in on it?
Yeah, I think everybody was in on it.
Yeah,
I disagree. I do not think everybody was in on it.
I don't think. Hey, you know what? I don't think Colonel Worf was in on it. I like Colonel Worf. I don't like you guys. I know you guys don't like him.
I didn't say I didn't like Colonel Worf. I just didn't like Michael Dorn playing him. That's what I didn't like about it.
What a family resemblance. No, yeah, I think everyone was in on it because I think everyone wanted to stop the peace talks. So I don't think it mattered.
Yes, he would have ordered death, and he wouldn't have said in the order, in the spirit of fostering peace, the death sentence is commuted. So he wouldn't have done that if he was in on it. So I feel
maybe that's just they wanted to show that they had that, and they were planning to kill him on Repente anyway. Killed by planning to escape. So
yeah, but again, I don't think the judge was in on it.
Yeah,
I really, really don't.
No, because they do say when they do escape, and Kirk figures out the shapeshifter is messing with them. They basically say 2 death sentences would have screwed everything up, but being murdered, trying to escape, that's plausible.
No, what they were saying was that dying by accident at Repente was too obvious.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, right. If for one, it would have been okay.
But killed while trying to escape. That's believable for both. It had nothing to do with,
I see your point, Brad. You just have more faith in the Klingon justice system than we do.
I don't. I just feel like the entire
non-corruptibility of the judges.
Yeah, I just feel like a judge at that point, knowing that the world is watching, would still just go by the letter of the law. And anyway, I don't know. I just don't feel like he was in on it. In fact, I feel like a lot of Klingons were not in on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I don't even think he has to be on it just to give a bad verdict of guilty, because everyone's guilty.
That's true, but I still feel like...
It doesn't necessarily have to be a Kirk thing. It could just be a really crappy system thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I feel like there's some universe out there where they were found innocent, so there. I'm just going to have that in my head canon. Some alternate reality.
The Kelvin timeline.
Sure, why not?
The Kelvin timeline, yeah. When we get there to the Kelvin Star Trek 6, there'll be
the Black Mirror universe.
Please don't rip off any more original series movies. Please don't do that.
We can get who looks and sounds nothing like Christopher Plummer. We'll get him to play Chang. That's what we'll do. Hey-o. Deep cut. Moving on.
So actually, he could probably still do it.
He could.
That dude's awesome. I mean, he's still acting, so it's not like he couldn't do it. But please don't do
He's
that.
the only Canadian who's not playing hockey.
Yeah, him and Shatner.
But they found him on a rink.
Anyway. All right, so Yeah. Now let's discuss the thing that really bugs Brandon about walking out the front door of Verapente. And why can't they decide on a pronunciation of Verapente? I've heard it as Verapente and Verapente in that episode of Enterprise.
We'll just do it like Uhura does it. Verapente da!
We as condemning food, supplies, and things.
I don't know. Going back to the pronunciation, though, I've actually heard a lot of people make that complaint, and it doesn't bother me in the slightest. Because if I say it and a guy in Jersey says it, it's going to sound different.
Yeah, but if you have two Klingons in the same room saying it differently...
Yeah, because it doesn't mean we grew up in the same place. Our accents would be different.
Dang it, that's the same argument Dave used, and I was hoping to poke holes in it, but you just won't let me.
No, I agree with you, Patrick. It adds a certain authenticity to it, because people don't say things the same way.
No, we kind of have
in
this
America.
Like view, because all right, so each race was created to be a certain demographic, right? Like that's kind of how Star Trek was built, but that doesn't mean that everyone talks the same, that comes from the same country or area of the country or world.
True.
Yeah, remember that next time you tease me about my Canadian accent.
I definitely will, but that's my point. See, he would say it differently, and we would make fun of him. So one of those Rurapentes, we're making fun of the other.
Okay.
In Canada, we say Rurapunte.
No, please, no.
Ponte. But even not even going as far as America, Canada. I mean, literally, someone in Brooklyn would say those words differently than I would living in Queens, and I can walk there from one to the other.
No, I know exactly what you mean, because in Utah, there are certain people who think that the word viaduct is viaduct, and that is not a word. But they're like, no, it's viaduct. Really? Look it up.
Yeah.
Oh, right. It's not a word. Here's what I found interesting about the differences of Verapente in Star Trek 6 and in the Enterprise episode. In Star Trek 6, they have like these lasers that they're cutting away at whatever they're mining. They have old pickaxes in the Enterprise episodes. It took them like 150 years to get to lasers from pickaxes. Well, that is a very ineffective way of mining.
It is, but it's a really effective way to let the people die while they're doing it.
True.
Exactly.
True.
So, I mean, new jailer took over, decided he wanted more mining, less dying.
Yeah, if you think about that though, like you're gonna get they're mining with lasers, like they could just like revolt against the captors like with these mining lasers. Just be like, I'll mine. Just go all Rambo on the captors.
So really, that's a negative for 6. Then is what we're saying here, right?
But they could also take the pickaxe and put it in their skulls too, right? So
yeah, that's true.
A little harder, though. I mean, you have to like get up on them to do it. They'll see you coming.
How long do Klingons live? Like 200 years, like Vulcans, or like do we know? Like I know they live longer than humans, obviously, because Deep Space Nine established that.
Mm-hmm.
But I was thinking, I don't know, maybe this would have been too long. But if we would have seen like the jail, like the warden guy from Star Trek 6, but like that same actor, he shows up. He was in 09. He was in Voyager. He was in Next Generation.
As a Klingon?
Put him in the same.
No, this is what you do.
No,
you get his son Mark to be the warden in Enterprise.
Oh, okay, he has a son who's also
Mark Shepard. You don't know who Mark Shepard is?
Did he play Morn? I'm serious. This is a serious question.
I don't either.
Mark Allen Shepard played Morn.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Mark Allen Shepard. Is that who we're talking about?
His son Mark Shepard. Who's coming?
So Mark Allen Shepard is not.
Mark Allen Shepard is dad. Mark Shepard just goes by Mark Shepard, his son. Spent many years on Supernatural. He was in Firefly as Badger, the crime. I don't know if you'd call him a boss per se. He sure wanted to be. He's coming to Salt Lake Comic-Con. So, yeah.
They should have just got Worf to be the lawyer in this one.
Colonel Worf. Michael Dorn. Colonel Worf is the warden.
We've officially gone off the rails.
All I'm saying is, I thought that would have been cool point of continuity.
Yes.
Just throwing it out there. Some would call it fan service. Had they done it, I'd probably be sitting here complaining about it. But since they didn't, I'm going to say, that would have been cool. Yeah. So that's the struggle of being a fan.
That's how I feel about fan service, is people complain about it when it's there, and they complain about it when it's not there. There's no pleasing.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. You can't please everyone. We've already established that in just life in general, you can't please everyone, and that's fine. Because if we all liked the same things the same way, how boring would this world be?
Yeah,
exactly. Variety is the spice of life.
Yes, agreed.
Judge Advocate Wolf.
I will. Yeah,
we call it Jaw.
About Kolos, right? I did like that he stayed and didn't escape. Because I felt like he's absolutely right. He's like, if he was just like became a fugitive, that would have thrown in the face of all the years he spent advocating for the law. So I liked that. And, I guess we never see him again on Enterprise. I do hope he survived, and I hope he went back and instituted some changes in the justice system to whatever degree they were. I hope he's able to survive, because they even say at the end, hey, life expectancy isn't here that long, and you're sentenced here for a year. But Martok's pretty tough Klingon. I think he pulled it out. He survived in that Dominion camp, so I think he survived Repente, right?
We would have seen that in season 5.
Yeah.
Yes! The magic bag of hindsight. Oh, yeah, we would have seen Kolos come back.
Well, the events, the way that this episode ended, that gets continued in a later episode, too. So it's not like they're not good about continuity.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because Duras falls into the Expanse,
bounty. Yeah. They also have they have the bounty looking for Archer. So,
yeah.
I mean, like, at least there's ramifications that they actually noticed that he walked out the front door, right? But, I mean, they could have at least, put a lock on the door or something.
Well, he walked out the front door, and that's why the lock was there when Kirk wanted to leave.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, oh, we really should have a way for people to not go to the surface.
Who would have thought they pull on the front door?
Yeah, Archer ruined it for everybody.
But guys, that was extremely anticlimactic. Like, how can you defend that? Like, as a climax to an episode. Like, it makes it cheapens Star Trek 6 and it's lame at the same time. Like, in my opinion, because like, oh, Captain, we have to hurry. We have a 10-minute window here. We can sit and we can talk for a while, and we can just run out the front door. And I don't know. And they were gonna have room for one more person. Like, that's ridiculous to me.
And
this is like the alien graveyard. It's notorious, like, it's the Alcatraz of Star Trek universe. And sure, let's just go out the front. I mean, I'm with you, Brandon. Like that, when I saw, like, I was waiting for like another scene. I'm like, oh no, they keep panning out. Is this it? Is this it? Oh, executive producer Brandon, this is it. Like, this is the last scene.
No credit cookie.
I was disappointed. So that's my take.
The credit cookie is Reed building a snowman, a snow Klingon.
Oh, not a snow Vulcan? That would have been funnier.
No. Well, it could have been, because it's after the season 1 episode.
I know. It's like, why did someone build a snow Vulcan? Just make everybody think. I'm sorry, that's a dumb idea, but anyway. But, yeah. And you have to wonder what the security measures are at Repente in this time, because do they just let people die on the surface? Do they already have that shield that prevents beaming out? Because transporters aren't a real big thing on Enterprise yet. They only start using them out of complete necessity in Season 3, which is good for them. It's good for them because, and even after that, they still would prefer to take a shuttle. But they obviously didn't. I don't think that they beamed down to the planet. That's never talked about. And does anyone find it weird that they have a very un-Starfleet way of getting Archer out of there? Going through back channels and paying bribes and stuff?
Well,
anybody have a problem with that?
Not me at all.
No, like I don't know if there was a way they could have gotten them out otherwise.
Agreed.
I
just put a Viridian patch on his back or whatever.
And I saw that in the first movie. The first time I saw the movie, which was in a theater with my family because we're all nerds, and I just thought he just put something on his back. What is that little Velcro strip back there?
He just put a kick me sign on him.
Kirk is a jerk sign. Like
Kirk is a jerk. You gotta love rhymes.
I do like the continuity of the Klingon prisons. They don't like give you prison issue uniforms. They just let you wear your Starfleet uniform underneath your prison stuff. Archer's wearing his, and Kirk wore his. Thank goodness, or the Enterprise never could have found him because Spock put that on his uniform. So. Continuity.
Well, I feel like they have so many different species of beings at Repente that to try to issue a standard prison uniform would be next to impossible. But then there's also replicators. Aren't there replicators by this time in Star Trek? So
no, they got Chef.
Yeah. They got Riker.
No, I'm talking about in Star Trek 6, guys.
Oh.
But they still have a kitchen on the Enterprise.
Well, they have a kitchen, yeah, with a freaking turkey and
maybe
and mashed potatoes.
They have in the pot.
Was that mashed potatoes? I thought
That
they were making
place
some
they
kind of
eat.
bread, but I could be wrong.
I assumed it was mashed potatoes.
You know, Brandon, I thought it. I always think it's a bird because it has like the whisker. It looks like a drumstick,
Yes.
like in the mashed potatoes.
It does.
Oh,
it
boy.
does.
We're off the rails.
So yeah, well, that was inevitable. But the thing is
Welcome
that
to Warp 5.
if you think about it from a complete ethical standpoint, maybe T'Pol went about it in a sneaky way, but she's also very logical. So she did what logic dictated. They had to get Archer out of there, and that was the most logical way in her mind to do it. So I felt it didn't conflict with her character, but I don't know. And it had to have been sanctioned by Starfleet.
Yeah, and we're not allies with the Klingons
This
at this
is
point,
true.
like we are in the 24th century. We're not in negotiations with peace talks like we are in Star Trek 6. So at this point, like this is an enemy force who has captured one of our commanders, like one of our top officers. We're going in, we're getting him out. Like I don't care what we need to do, we're getting him out. Like, and you don't have to worry about the political ramifications at that point because you're not in a state of war, but you're like your guys aren't friends. So I didn't see it. Obviously, there's a lot less, I guess, repercussions back then than there would have been later on down the road when there's a lot more diplomatic channels open between Starfleet and the Klingons.
Well, and I think that it feels to me like the Klingon High Council, per se, in Enterprise wasn't all that bothered about looking for him as much as Duras was. So, because they knew who he was after that trial. They knew what he had done for the Klingon Empire and saved them from civil war. So you have to put on the show of, yeah, well, the law's the law and this is the punishment. But he escaped. Okay. So it seems like that was their attitude, but not Duras's.
Even though they figured out who he was and what he had done, they were like, yeah, we won't kill you. We'll just kill you slowly at a mine. Go.
Yeah. Maybe they thought that Starfleet would break him out anyway. We don't know. It doesn't matter.
Maybe that's why the door was open.
Yeah, there you go. They left the door open. Well,
We fixed it for you, Brandon. Don't worry.
I think they bribed the warden, if I remember correctly. They bribed some Klingon official.
Yeah, there was somebody off planet that they used to get their ship and whatnot. And
I can't believe we've talked about Star Trek 6 this long and no one talked about the scene with the boots where the guy walks in and he's being yelled at and Spock just points down because his feet would obviously not fit.
It was
It's
actually
like the most ridiculous scene ever and I love it.
Crewman Dax.
Jadzia.
Yeah, I guess the symbiote wasn't that guy? Or come on, Star Trek. You reusing names, reusing sets, reusing story points.
Yeah,
Welcome
but
to Star
why
Trek.
was that symbiote in a non-trill then? Because
because they didn't even know they were joined. If you look at Next Generation.
I've never seen
but
Jadzia's feet.
It's a whole other topic. Worf is into weird stuff, I guess.
oh,
And you wonder what they mean when they say zoo. Okay. I'm sorry.
We
I
should
brought
probably
that
wrap
up.
it up because we got to get to the next episode. So.
stop making me laugh, guys. Okay, so yeah, let's pretend. In my headcanon, Kolos does survive his sentence, and he goes on to have an effect on the future justice system. But let's go around the horn with our final thoughts. Let's start with you, Zach, since you're our guest.
Thank you. This episode, yeah, it's kind of like a bargain budget Star Trek 6 in certain respects, but I did like a lot of the new elements it brought to it. I liked that it examined, the Klingon culture and deeper and showed that, in that conversation with Archer and Kolos that, yeah, you don't think we're all warriors, right? I mean, that's doesn't make any sense. And it was something we all knew as fans, but they established on screen finally. I like that. I love J.G. Hertzler. Martok is my favorite Klingon. I know he's a different character here, but he still brings that same, gravitas to the character, and he's just very compelling dynamic guy. So I enjoyed his performance here. His voice is so Martok, but the appearance-wise, they made him look extremely different. So I could suspend my disbelief and just enjoy the performance. It started off strong. You throw you in, you're like Archer's on trial. Like, what is this about? So it does hook you in, even though, as I mentioned, it's extremely short teaser, hooks you in, keeps you interested. And the point of view thing, well, yeah, it's kind of a remix of several other Star Trek, trial episodes and just trial in general shows. It added a different layer of things than we had in Star Trek 6, so it mixed it up enough for me. It does get seriously hurt by the very anticlimactic ending, though. So on the whole, average episode Enterprise, but I enjoyed it.
Fair enough. Brandon.
Yeah, I'm glad we discussed this. I'm glad I watched them again, and the episode still for me is pretty low on my list, and it's all the things that I mentioned in the episode already. Having Duras, there's just a little too much fan service that just didn't work for me. Duras, the angles of the camera for the trial, walking out of her Pente, it just doesn't work for me, and it's still one of the lower episodes on my list of Enterprise. And it's, I said last night on Twitter, that I don't like this, and I think it was Thad Haight who responded. He's like, man, I don't understand what you like and don't like. And I said, I like the good episodes. And I don't know. To me, this wasn't a good episode. And I know that I'm pretty much in the minority on that opinion. I know that people really like this. And I think that the fan service works for a lot of people. And that's okay. It just doesn't work for me. So, I watch it when I watch the show. We determine it's an essential episode because of the continuity later on in the season. But it's, it's never going to make any lists for me. And it's one that always goes to the back burner. So,
hey, that's fine. We all have different views. Patrick.
So, yeah, I mean, I enjoy the episode. I enjoy the movie. I never watched them back to back. I kind of like the episode a little less doing it that way, but down the line, I just won't watch them back to back, and I'll be fine again. The ending is a bit anticlimactic, so I just kind of ignore that it happens that way. And everything else kind of falls into place. Am I running out of my way to watch it? No. Am I running away from it if it's coming up, on my list? No, I'll watch it. It's just another episode of Enterprise that I somewhat enjoy and can watch at times. Nothing amazing, nothing terrible. It's just an episode.
All right. I'm probably the one who likes this episode the most. So
That's
it's
good.
one
I'm
of those.
glad.
Yeah, it's not one of those that I'm just going to be like, oh, this is my favorite episode, because we all know what my favorite episode is. And because if there's Shran involved, that's always going to win over anything else. But I actually found myself liking it more after watching it back to back with Star Trek 6 and discovering how many differences there really were. So, I will still enjoy it. I will still watch it in my rewatches. Actually, I'll still watch everything in my rewatches. Yes, Patrick, even Extinction.
I do too. I watch everything on my rewatches.
Yeah.
You start a rewatch if you don't watch
It's the point of a rewatch. You can't
Exactly.
skip it.
Yeah.
I do.
You got to do it start to finish.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so I still like it. But that's the interesting thing, is getting people with different viewpoints discussing something, because if it's all just a love fest or a hate fest, that's not interesting to listen to. So Star Trek 6 and Judgment, same but different. So that's my final ruling on the matter, and I pick up my giant gauntlet and
bang, bang, sparks,
Yeah.
sparks, bang.
it's like
bang.
the spark that came out of my hairdryer this morning. Good grief.
Zach, thank you so much for joining us today. Where can people find you when you're not walking out the front door?
Well, you can find me here on the network with Ken and Haley every week, talking about Star Trek, the original series movies, the reboot movies, all adventures of Captain Kirk, old and new. You can find me personally on Twitter at MoronZach. That's MOOREONZACH. You can also find me hosting my own podcast about Smallville, the Young Superman show, at Always Smallville on Twitter. That's with one S.
Excellent. Well, Undercooked Targ is not the only thing we've been discussing here on the network this week, so take a listen to this clip and see what else you may have missed elsewhere on Trek.fm.
Previously on Trek.fm. The Edge, a Star Trek Discovery podcast.
Also, and this might be me reading way too much into this, but I feel like because Tilly ends up being so instrumental in what happens later in the mirror universe. Part of me, when I was reading this, wondered if in the back of my mind, Stamets is like, I need to have one person, and Lorca's like, oh, I want to make my own... Oh, Tilly, that's who you want. Yeah, okay, sure.
To the journey!
This is Jeff Foxworthy, You Might Be a Redneck If.
Oh, Lord.
If you fall in love with a hologram...
You might be in a doomed relationship.
If you fall in love and it never really happened...
You might be in a doomed relationship.
If you fall in love with someone manipulative...
You might be in a doomed relationship.
If you can't even remember your own name...
You're definitely in a doomed relationship.
The orb.
So I'm going to destroy your computers, so if you want to fight, you're going to have to use real bombs. I hope you're ready, because I'm leaving. You figure it out. But of course, trailing the Enterprise is always the Starfleet cleanup ship that comes in and cleans up the mess.
Yeah, the USS Broomsweep.
Right,
yeah.
USS Broomsweep.
Standard orbit.
Can we not just go to just a planet and everybody has dark complexion and it's not a thing? It's not like a crux of the story, right? I think that would have been true progress. And when it's not even like, oh, well, since we're going to this planet, we have to talk about race. That's the whole point of the whole story. It serves the story well, but I don't think that's a prerequisite to have a story like this.
And that's what else is happening on Trek.fm.
So check out all these shows and join in the conversation about your favorite corner of the Star Trek universe and beyond. You'll find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you're an Apple user, please be sure to hit the subscribe button in Apple Podcasts on iPhone, iPad, or Apple TV, or the desktop iTunes app to get the latest episodes as soon as they're published. And please leave us a star rating and a written review. If you're not an Apple user, we've got you covered as well. You can find our shows on Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Windows Phone, in most third-party apps, and you can stream and download the MP3 file from our website or grab the RSS link as well.
Fantastic. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show, and there are many, many ways for you to do that. The best place, of course, to join in the larger conversation is the Babel Conference, which is our listeners group on Facebook. Please join. You have to ask to become a member of the Babel Conference, but, just ask to join and we'll let you right in. Just type BABEL, Babel, into the search field on Facebook, and it should come up as one of the first options. If you'd like to send us an email, you can use the form on the website at trek.fm/contact. Choose to send to a show and choose Warp 5. That will come right to us. You can also find the network on Twitter at Trek.fm and on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM. Now, Brandon, when you aren't fantasizing about what Jadzia Dax's feet look like, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Brandon-Shea. You can find me here on the network with The Edge, a Star Trek Discovery podcast. And you can find me over on the Fandom Podcast Network with a show called Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast, which is devoted to Alfred Hitchcock movies. And Patrick, where can people find you when you're not trying to throw cases and not do a very good job as a defending lawyer?
They can find me on Twitter at MagicDrop5. The 5 is the number. It's all one word. And they can find me popping up in and out of the Babel Conference from time to time. It's not as much as it used to be. I'm pretty busy lately. But I do pop in there and I check out what's going on. And that's about it. Right now, that's all I have going on. That might change in the coming next couple weeks, so keep an eye out for that. But, that's it for now. Brandi, where can people find you when I'm not sliding a kick me sign on your back with Velcro?
I wouldn't put it past you. Well, you can find me lurking in the Babel Conference from time to time. My free time has been severely curtailed during the very busy season at my work, so I don't have as much time as I used to, but that will change later on. You can find me on Twitter at BrandyWine12. Brandi is spelled with an I, and the 12 is a number. And you'll also hear me from time to time on the 602 Club. You never know when I'm going to pop up on there talking about nerd stuff. And I do a podcast with my lovely husband, Dave, which is called the Dark Corner Podcast, which you can find on strangeanddeadly.com or anywhere you get your podcasts. And we talk about pop culture from a different, darker point of view. And I get out all my frustrations and swearing on that podcast so that I don't do that here.
If you'd like to help us keep all our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron on the network on Patreon, which is how I got involved when I first became a associate producer of Metatrex. Visit patreon.com/TrekFM. That's Patreon, patreon.com/TrekFM to get all the details. Perks include early access to episodes, exclusive content, producer credits, and more. Available through a special patrons website, Patron Zone. It requires a great deal of money to produce, host, and distribute these shows each month. We'd really appreciate any support you can give us and hope you'll join the team. Again, you'll find all the details at patreon.com/TrekFM.
And at this time, we'd like to thank the wonderful supporters of Warp 5 and Trek.fm. These people are very gracious in donating their funds to become associate producers of our show. And they don't just help us, they help the whole network. We have Norman C. Lau, Floyd Dorsey, Mike Morrison, Tim Cooper, Justin Ozer, Mark Flessa, and Joe Saltzman. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it, and we couldn't do it without you.
Well, that does it for this episode of Warp 5, and we will see you all next time when we'll be talking about...
We have Larry Nemeczek joining us next week.
Larry Nemeczek is joining us. Oh, Larry, it's been too long since we've talked, Larry.
Mm-hmm.
I got
a
to
couple
meet
of good
him.
episodes coming up. We have Larry joining us, and then the week after that, we're doing our movie night on Kung Fu.
Mm-hmm.
And then the week after that, we're doing our commentary for Extinction. And then the week after that, we have Keith R.A. DeCandido joining us to talk zombies and Impulse. And then the week after that, we're doing another movie night, and we're doing Frankenstein. And then, so that takes us up to episode 149. So, we got some great stuff coming up over the next 5 weeks.
Wonderful. I'm so excited for all of it. So,
that's
it for us.
Keep calm and kabla!
Or keep calm and boom on, boomers. We'll see you next time.
I just got to, while we're talking with this, I just got to bring one thing up. Brandi?
Yes.
Measure.
Measure. There's an EA in there. It's measure.
I say nuclear. Is that right?
Yes! Don't make me come over there, Zach. I will beat the crap out of you, because nuclear is not a word.
I believe
Brandi,
it.
how do you say pleasure?
Pleasure.
How do you say
comb?
But pleasure is spelled
water.
the same as measure.
How do you say comb? How do you say tomb?
Everyone say water.
Water.
You guys all say it like New Yorkers. That's crazy.
Anyways, but I'm just saying that pleasure and measure are spelt the same way, except for the B.
And so are tomb and comb.
This is not at all
completely differently.
You don't say pleasure.
For anyone still listening at this point,
you say tomb.
Hold on, anyone who hasn't given up on this yet, just if you go back on the
English
internet,
is stupid, okay? English is stupid and it doesn't follow its own rules. And that is why people have a really hard time learning it. So have a little sympathy for people trying to learn English, all right?
So there's a comedian who bashes watermelons, and he does a whole skit on this.
Gallagher, I know. I know.
So if you want to go check out tomb, home, comb, whatever, we can go there.
Gallagher.
Yeah. And that's another one. Come and home.
We'll forgive you. Brandi, you're just learning English.